It's 2:00 and this meeting will come to order. First order of business is the roll call, and everyone here is, or everyone is here except for Katie Blank. And we will start off with the presentation of the 2022 audit by Toni Hackwith.
Could I add, I have two board correspondence items that came to me that I'd like to read into the record, if that's okay, before you get started. The first one is dated June 22nd, 2023, and it's from Lake City Law. Attention Board of Trustees, Community Library Network. Dear members of the Board of Trustees, I am writing to tender my resignation as General Counsel for the Community Library Network. It has been a pleasure to work with the library and its staff. Please let me know if I can be of service with the transition to new legal counsel. I wish the library every success. Very truly yours, Lake City Law Group, Catherine B. Brereton. And the second correspondence is for Katie Blank, who was unable to attend today. And these were questions directed to the auditor. The library district has been accused of having a $2 million slush fund. The dictionary definition of slush fund is, quote, a reserve of money used for illicit purposes, especially political bribery, end of quote. How long have you been our auditor? In the scope of your work as auditor, would you be able to see if the library district had a slush fund, especially one of $2 million? And have you, as our auditor, ever seen the library district have a slush fund of any sort, especially one of $2 million? The library district was also accused of not being financially transparent. In the last several years, we have worked very hard at making our financial statements and budgets as transparent as possible. In your opinion, is the library district financially transparent? And again, Katie Blank.
Here in Post Falls. I'm not sure if you would like me to address those questions or give my presentation and address the questions after that. I'm open to whatever the board would like me to.
I think it would be fine to give your presentation and then answer the questions. What do you guys think?
I was going to say the same.
Okay, perfect. I believe that all of you have audited financial statements. You were provided a paper copy earlier. I brought the down copies today. I'm just going to go over the audit opinions that we issue as a result of our financial statement audit, and then I'll go through the financial statements. And then stop me along the way if you have any questions. And if I can't answer them here, I will certainly get back to you with that information. Okay, so pages 1 through 3. This is our independent auditor's report. And this is where we issue an opinion on whether or not we feel that your financial statements are materially stated. And we issued what's called a clean or an unmodified opinion, meaning that we did not feel that the financial statements were materially stated, that through our audit procedures that we feel that they are presented materially correct to you. I don't know if you have questions on the audit report specifically. The next section of your report is called the management's discussion and analysis. And this is a narrative that's written by the district about the financial operations, what has happened in the last year, what you see that might be going forward and things of that sort. I'm not going to go over this narrative with you. I'm going to focus on the financial statements themselves. So if you turn to page 11. Pages 11 through 13 are your financial statements are prepared on a couple different bases of accounting. One is called a full accrual basis, very similar to the business entities where you record and recognize all of your assets, including your capital assets and their depreciation and your long-term liabilities. On the other presentation, what's called a modified accrual basis accounting, it's just pretty much your current assets and current liabilities. It does not state your capital assets and your long-term liabilities. The district operates for the most part and budgets on the modified accrual basis. As far as revenues coming in and expenses going out and the cash you have in your bank, what people owe you in the current year as such. But I'm gonna go over both statements. They can be a little confusing. Stop me and ask questions. But like I said, the formats of the full accrual statements, they're very similar to a business type. So if you're familiar with business financial statements, the presentation of them is a little different and odd, especially the income statement. But okay, page 11, this is called your statement of net position. And this shows your total assets, including your long-term assets, which are your capital assets that are written off over time. It also shows your liabilities, short-term liabilities, and then also your long-term debt liabilities. And your assets less your liabilities are what's called your net position. And your net position at September 30th, 2022, your total net position was $8.4 million. Of that amount, 5.7 million are invested in your capital assets, less than related debt. So, and then you have 479,000 that are restricted grants and donations. Now, this number includes that 5.7 million capital assets, so it's not all current assets. Pages 12 and 13. This is an income statement, a full accrual income statement, but for purposes of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, they have a different presentation. Off to the left, they show your expenses, and then going on to the right, they show revenues that offset those expenses. And then if you flow down, then it shows general revenues like property taxes and such that help to pay for those expenses. So very different presentation. The resulting figure is change in net position. So your revenues less your expenses was 281,000 for this last fiscal year. Now remember, that's on the full accrual basis. You're not writing off capital assets here, you're amortizing them for a certain time. It's not a real cash type financial statement or statement. The next statement, page 14, is your balance sheet. And this is the modified accrual balance sheet. The assets here you'll see show your cash, your accounts receivable, property tax receivables. It does not reflect any of your capital assets. So your total assets at September 30th, 22 were 3.9 million. And then your liabilities, current liabilities, not long-term, for 91,000. And then your deferred inflows, property taxes that you did not receive until after 60 days of your year end, were 460,000. And so your assets less your liabilities and deferred inflows, it's what equals your fund balance. Your fund balance consisted of 479,000 of restricted funds. Those would be from outside sources that provide you funds that are restricted for a particular purpose. There are assigned funds where the board has said that we want these funds set aside and spent for this particular purpose. Here it's for capital asset repair and replacement. There's 454,000. And then unassigned is the remainder of your fund balance. And at 9/30/22 was 2.4 million. Prior year at year end was 2.4 million of unassigned fund balance.
Question?
Sure.
Couple times there, you've got accounts payable.
Mhm.
Or liabilities, accrued payroll.
Mhm.
Is this a snapshot for just a month, or what is current?
This is if the district closed its doors at 9/30/22, what you would owe vendors and what you would owe your employees. Does that answer your question?
So it's the next paycheck, basically. For the
For
remaining,
payroll?
yeah,
It's amounts that people have worked that have not yet been paid at that month end.
okay.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks, paid at the most, basically. Or.
Yeah.
I was just trying to see why the number was maybe not bigger, or is it vacation time? Is it?
That is not vacation.
Okay,
That is just payroll that you are due. And I don't have off the top of my head what their pay cycle is. Once a month. Okay, so that's what would have been paid. That's right. Your payroll. Yeah, correct. That's right. Yeah. Any other questions on this statement? The next page, page 15, this is a reconciliation of that statement of net position I first talked about and this balance sheet. So it's showing you what the differences are in those two statements. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Certainly, if you guys have questions after my presentation that you think of, feel free to call me and ask questions. Page 16 is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. So this is your revenues for the year less your expenses. Your net change in fund balance is net income, and that was $396,000 this fiscal year, September 30th, 2022. The prior year change was $663,000, and that varies. A big variation there is capital outlay, repair and maintenance and capital outlay that you need for the buildings and such. Personnel expenses are fairly consistent. Sometimes your operating expenses will fluctuate a bit too. That's generally the big difference there. Prior year revenue was 5.4 million, and expenses were 4.7. The next page, page 17. This is your reconciliation of the full accrual statement of activities, income statement, and this last statement of revenues that we went over. So this shows you what the differences are between those two statements. Page 18. This is the balance sheet called Statement of Net Position in Governmental Terms of Cooperative Information Network. So it shows you the assets that they had at September 30th, and they did not have any liabilities at that point in time. And so their net position was equal to their assets of $54,000. Page 19. This is the income statement for CIN, showing your operating revenues, your operating expenses, and then your change in net position. There was a net loss or a decrease in net position of $283 for this last season. Page 20. This is your statement of cash flows for CIN. And this is showing you the cash receipts that actually flowed into the network, and then those that flowed out, showing your change in your cash position for the year. The next page, pages 21 through 39, those are your footnotes to the financial statements. So they describe the accounting policies. They go further into detail of your capital assets, your compensated absence policies, your long-term debt, and anything that pertains to your financial statements. Again, I'm not going to flip page through page and bore you with that, but certainly if you have questions there, feel free to stop me right now and ask me the questions you have on the footnotes. The next section is called required supplementary information. Page 40. As a governmental entity in the state of Idaho, you are in the FERC program, the retirement program, and that program has to have at the state level an actuary study done and an audit of the funds that they're holding for retirees. And so then what's required to be presented in your financial statement are factors and financial information related to those actuary studies. So the information on here is an estimate of the net pension liability of the district, what your portion is that you owe retirees and such, and then just some other percentages and stuff like that related to that. The overall state's financial responsibility and what portion would be yours. You're required to report this and report 10 years of information. It didn't start till 2015, so we're almost there. The next. Sure.
So the perceived fund of the state is audited separately? Okay, thank you.
And page 41 and 42. This is your statement of revenue expenditures, budget to actual. So it shows your original budgeted amounts for your revenues and expenses for the year, your final budget, if you have amended your budget, and then the actual amounts that you actually had for the year, and then it shows the variance for the year. Page after that just explains the budgetary data and the basis on which it's prepared. And then page 43 and 44. Since you are a governmental entity, you are required to also, or we're required as auditors to issue a report over your internal control over financial reporting and laws and regulations that relate to your financial reporting. As a part of this, we have to come in and review what procedures and policies you have in place. And then we perform tests of controls over those in various systems, your expenditure system, payroll system, your cash reporting system, to see that you're following the internal control policies and procedures you have in place. If we find that you're not following those procedures and policies, this report, we would issue what's called either a significant deficiency or a material weakness, depending on how pervasive it is. We did not find any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, so this is also would be regarded as a clean report. We also did not find any non-compliance over financial reporting that would adhere to like state statutes over financial reporting, but federal, you're filing your payroll reports, all of that nature. So at the end of my presentation, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, Tony, I have a question. If there were any findings or deficiencies in a 2021 report, which I didn't go back and look at last year, the year before, would they be referenced and discussed to see whether they were remedied in the current year that you were auditing?
They would.
No?
No.
Okay.
If you were required to have what's called a single audit, where you receive 750,000 or more in federal funds, we would be issuing another report because we would have to test to make sure you're complying whatever you're supposed to be spending that money on. And in their reporting, they do have, it's a requirement to report a summary of prior year findings, not only for federal funds, but internal control that we test to. But no, it is not a part of an audit report that does not have some.
Page 41, you're comparing budget and actuals. So final budgeted amount is that that column, the amount that was approved that we presented a year ago or a little over or less than a year ago to the voters, or not to the voters, but
That the board approved. So the
that
original,
were approved and that the voters got a copy of one if they came to the meeting. Was that the number that, like in August when they have the hearing to go over the budget? Or is the final change later? I don't know.
the original budget is published in the paper. And all of this information is available in public knowledge, but available to the public. Yes. Answer any of that?
The amended budget was also published.
Yeah.
And there was a hearing when the board approved the amended budget.
So I guess I'm asking the county on the property tax on this year, it's August 10th, they're having a hearing. And that's presented for taxpayers to see, is that original or is that amended final? Or is it amended after that hearing maybe? I just wondered, when does final become final?
I think I understand his question, but I don't know if it's correct or not. If there are amendments made during the fiscal year to the budget, are they incorporated in that number there? If that's what you're asking, I don't know.
What, I guess I'm asking for really the definition of what is the original and what is the final? When did they determine, or what are they?
The original, I believe you're going through your budgeting process currently. So that would be when the original would be settled or approved by the board. And then if there are additional revenues that are going to come in, or unexpected or additional expenses that are going to have to be paid, then the board would amend the budget, and it would go through the same process as the original budget and be approved and published in the paper in the same manner.
And then actual amounts, is that what the county treasurer sends to the library board or to the library district, or what is actual?
The actual column are your actual revenues that the district received and the actual expenses that you paid for personnel, capital outlay, operating expenses. So that's it. The county does not provide that information. That's what comes from your financial reporting system. Currently. So it's the
Because the reason I'm asking is a couple of months ago, I looked into it and I looked at what the treasurer collected, and it was several $100,000 more than what the budget was. I don't know if that was inaccurate or why the treasurer would show that. And it was a little different here, but I didn't see anything so small as 12,000 difference.
Are you talking about the district or the county?
If I went onto the county website for the treasurer, there's a way to put it in without looking at an individual taxpayer, and you can put it in and see what was
Paid the district.
paid, and you can see, if you don't put individual taxpayer in, you can see what was collected for each district.
Taxing district.
And I assume that came from the county treasurer, that what he collected. I just saw it somewhat different than.
Right. And so your financial statements are presented on the accrual basis. So any amounts that were due to you at September 30th that they had not yet remitted to you would be shown as a receivable on your books, that they still owed you that money. So they should be showing it as a payable. But they should align very closely.
I would have thought so, but what the treasurer collects apparently is different than what the budget thinks
Well,
he's
but
gonna collect.
they collect from everybody, and then based on the apportionment, then they remit it to you. So I'm not sure if you're looking at what they remitted to the district. I guess I'm not following, and I'm not following if I'm answering the question.
Sorry. Tim, are you talking about how we said we took 2% last year and you said we took 4%? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm saying, well, that's a different thing. The budget was higher than just 2% of what it looked like to me than the previous year's budget. It looked like it was based on what was collected by the treasurer. So I need to investigate or find out more, I guess. I thought it was maybe a simple answer, but I just misunderstood something.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I just don't know that I'm called.
Ask a simpler question.
Sure.
I wanted to make sure I understood, what is the difference between the, okay, page 14? Is it a change in how the method of accounting, the total fund balances on page 14 versus, I think in the rest of the report, page 16 and page 41, it's the difference.
So the fund balance?
Yeah.
So page 14, the total fund balance at year end was 3,345,487.
Yeah.
And on page 16, on the far right, the total is 3,345,487.
Okay, I think I'm just looking at,
Okay.
I have another question. Oh,
Oh, and you
yeah,
might be,
please.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I thought she was first.
You might be looking on the budget statement. So the budget statement is for the general fund only. It does not include the debt service. So on the page 41, the ending fund balance is 3,298,491.
Mhm.
If you go to page 16, you'll see that the general fund. in there.
Okay.
Another question, does the scope of the audit look at the categories where money was budgeted for versus where it was actually spent? For example, if they say X amount of dollars goes to facilities and so many dollars goes toward book purchases or materials, does part of the audit look to see whether or not the money is being spent and booked into those categories? So, you know, it's like, I'm not gonna sit there looking through each transaction as a board member. I'm just curious. I have no suspicions. I just want to understand, does it look and see, we budget X amount for, let's say, facilities, and we budgeted so much for purchase of materials. Does the scope of the audit include looking to see whether or not the funds were actually purchased and used in those particular areas, that we didn't exceed one over the other? So for example, if they want to buy more books and charge it to, you know, against the facilities budget, how does that, is there a look at that to see whether or not we spent within those categories?
We do look at to make sure, like if we pull expenditures, and we will look to see that they were coded to the correct
That's right.
account. Yes,
Okay,
yes, so supplies were coded to capital outlay and such. As far as the overall, for what we have to do as far as whether you're in compliance with your budget, is look at in total budget, because we don't audit and say, well, you budgeted this amount, why did you spend it on this? But that's not in our purview. But if you said you were going to spend 500,000 and you spent 600,000, then you would have spent over your appropriations, and that would be a violation of state statutes.
okay, so it is looked at whether it's coded correctly here and there. There is some random sampling there. Okay.
Yeah.
Good,
Yes.
that's kind of what I wanted to know.
Yes.
Okay. I have one last question.
Sure.
I know the foundation, the library foundation, is a separate entity. I understand there is one. If that money, because I was looking at what the college was doing, if that money, does that money exclusively go to the library? And if it does, is that included in any fashion whatsoever with regard to the CLN district? Well, no, I was looking at the college, and I think I was looking at a newspaper article, and I think it said, because the foundation's money goes exclusively to the college, the foundation must be included in the audit. And so I don't know whether the library foundation money goes exclusively to the library or not, but if it does, should that be included in an audit here or not?
That is.
And it's an area I don't know much about. I'm just based upon one article I saw on an unrelated
Yeah.
organization, but
Right.
I wonder if that
And
applied to
there
here.
are- EIN is a component unit of the library. That's why it's presented here too. It's a separate entity, but the controls and the management of it and controls are within the district's purview. And so there are steps, there are qualifications that we go through to determine whether it is a component unit and needs to be presented in your financial statements or whether it is not. So the determination of the foundation has been that it is not a required financial institution that needs to be reported as a component unit of the district.
Thank you.
If I could ask a couple of questions, how long have you been our auditor?
Brothers has been doing the audit since 2014. And prior to that, Magnuson McHugh did the audit and I was employed at Magnuson McHugh and I honestly don't know what year. they
But
started
10
doing
years, 20 years?
it. Well, I've been here, it's 14. So probably at least 10 years at Magnuson. Maybe 8 to 10. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
In the scope of your work as auditor, would you be able to see if the library district had a slush fund?
The library district has a fund balance. A slush fund. I guess I'm not quite sure what that is inferring. The question is if it was used for illicit purposes, money used for illicit purposes.
Sure.
We do and are required to look for abuse and fraud and error during our audit procedures. We did not find any of those items. You don't have a slush fund, you have a fund balance, which is a sign of a healthy district. And there isn't, and we don't report on or give an opinion on whether your fund balance is too high, too low. The GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, they issue a benchmark, a minimal benchmark of 2 months. And it's different for every single entity, depending on your operational needs, your facility needs, and things of that nature. So it is not in our purview to say you're right there. But certainly if we found anything being used for an illicit purpose, that would be brought to management and the board's attention. So I guess my answer is no.
Okay,
Sorry.
so in summary, in 8+ years, you haven't found anything
No.
that you needed to report.
Well, 8+ yeah,
Yes.
at Magnuson and here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just, I guess, an opinion, is the district financially transparent? Do we meet all the federal, state, local requirements for transparency?
We look at state statutes such as, are you publishing your budget? Are you financials available to the public, things of that nature. Again, we don't issue an opinion on the transparency, but I have not seen anything. Your financial statements are prepared and provided to the public, to the state, counting to every single individual that would like that. So I have not seen, I guess, anything that would make me feel that there was not transparency in the financial reporting or financial information provided.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
On page 41, I guess I'm a little bit confused. You got parentheses. But I think on revenues, like the variance, that's non-parentheses number is extra money that came in. Is that right? Because that is revenue. The expenses, when it's parentheses, it's money that didn't get spent.
Correct.
It was.
Correct.
So excess of revenues over expenditures. So that's revenues, but you got the word expenditures. So that is
That's-
extra money that came in during that year?
That is a net, that net figure in the variance column. Is that what you're looking at?
Yes.
Yes. So that net figure is that you received more revenue and you spent less. So the total of those together was a positive $468,000 per year. I don't have my glasses on, but yeah.
Okay, I was just, yeah.
Yeah.
The parentheses jumps around depending on whether it's expenses
Yes,
or.
yes.
I was just eyeballing that and just seeing why did our fund balance drop so much? I guess that's the beginning value. It's 1.3 million where the budget was 2.031.
So that's the variance, the fund balance. The beginning and the budget amount was $1.3 million more.
Okay, so that's positive. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Sorry.
So our
So
amount
the
is,
68 is a positive because you spent less, you received more, and the fund balance was higher than you had budgeted for. And a part of that is the timing of your audited financial statements too. You're doing your budget process right now, where your financial statements are not going to be audited until after your year end. And so it's kind of like, this is where we are, this is where we think we're going. So, yeah.
so what I see is on September 30th, we had almost 3.3 million in this fund balance, 1.3 million higher than what we had the year before. So in my educated terminology, I would say that was a slush fund. Now, I had no idea that slush fund meant that it was for bad illegal purpose. I just mean it's our extra money we're working with right now.
That's not correct. The increase in your fund balance this year was 396,000, not 1.3.
No, I mean, just looking at that fund balance, 3.3 million. I would say that was extra money that we hadn't spent. So in my non-financial mind, I would say that was a slush fund. I had no idea that slush fund meant
Illicit, yeah.
that it was illicit. That isn't what I ever
referred
meant.
to as a fund balance.
Okay,
That's the
so
problem.
the fund balance is growing at this point in time from what it was last year, and is just because we hadn't spent.
Well, this is comparing to budget. If you compare to last year, if you go to page 16, your prior year fund balance was 3.9 million. Yeah, current year is 3.3. So you've had a net change of 396,000. So you do have a fund balance of 3.3 million. Part of that fund balance is restricted, 479,000 for grants, and part of it's assigned. But you do have a positive fund balance. Don't refer.
Well, just to learn why we have that much. So I guess that will be the training, so. Okay,
As I was saying, the GFOA recommends at a minimum having 60 days. It's different for every entity. You receive your revenues, the majority of your revenues in two sums during the year. Your property taxes come in at 2 big times. Your state revenues come in quarterly. Your employees like to be paid monthly, and so do your vendors. So it is important to have that. And depending on the nature of your entity, if you have facility needs, if there was something that catastrophic happened, if you had to go out for a bond, your credit rating is going to be much better if you have fund balance than if you don't. And so you would get a lower interest rate and such. But there is not a set number that any entity should be at. It's management's your budgeting, your decision making. You certainly don't want to spend it down. Any other questions?
I guess you must have been super clear and we just all got it.
Anything that I wasn't. Okay, speak that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I move that we go to an executive session?
Um,
Somebody do that? That how it is?
do I announce it and then he makes motion?
It needs to be round robin, everybody needs to.
Okay. Well, no, but do I announce it or does he just make the
She
motion?
can start.
I was making a motion, just read the code or the whole verbiage too.
Yeah, you can read the whole thing.
I'd like to move that we move to executive session in accordance with Idaho law 74-206 1A to consider hiring a public official, employee, staff member, or individual agent within their respective qualities are to be evaluated in order to fill a particular vacancy or need.
Okay, it has been moved to go into executive session, Idaho Code 74-206 1A, to consider hiring a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent wherein the respective qualities are to be evaluated in order to fill a particular vacancy or need. So I guess we need a roll call vote.
Robinson, yes.
Plus, yes.
Tom Hanley, yes.
Addison, yes. All right, so that was unanimous. We will now be moving into executive session as per Idaho Code 74-206 1A to consider hiring a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent wherein the respective qualities are to be evaluated in order to fill a particular vacancy or need. Okay, so our next agenda item is an action item engaging the library attorney. You guys write down the motion or should I say it?
Do you need to address the other action item above it?
I think so. Oh, I do. Okay, the action item disengaging a library attorney is a moot point because our attorney resigned. So then the next action or the next item,
You need to talk louder. I'm sorry, I can
Okay.
really.
I'm sorry, I do need to work on that. Thank you for reminding me. All right, I move to authorize the director to meet with the Boyles Law Firm to craft a general counsel retainer and engagement letter for Community Library Network.
Please.
Yep. I move to authorize the director to meet with Boyles Law Firm to craft a general counsel retainer and engagement letter for Community Library Network.
Michelle, can you either amend it or add? It's going to complete it within a week.
I understand that.
Okay. Okay, so it has been moved to authorize the director to meet with Boyles Law Firm to craft a general counsel retainer and engagement letter for Community Library Network. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay, and it's a nay because this has just been a rushed situation. And no other firms were allowed to come in.
All right, the ayes have it. The motion is carried to authorize the director to meet with Boyles Law Firm to craft a general counsel retainer and engagement letter for Community Library Network. All right, our next agenda item is budget discussion.
I'm going to be pretty quick for time. You guys all received a packet I apologize, Julie, probably just got it now, but you also have one. In it, I'll just go over what was included one more time. I did last Thursday as well. It has our bylaws. It has the library trustee job description. It has our current annual report. It has the budget board approved August 18th, 2022. It has our strategic plan. It has the most recent classification and cost study. And then the previous board request two different budget worksheets, one labeled salary scenario A and one labeled salary scenario B. So I'll give you guys an opportunity to ask me or the staff any questions.
Did we just jump anywhere on the budget to discuss any piece of it? Is that how we do this?
My intention for today was mainly to go over sort of terms or concepts. You guys heard a lot about the budget stuff. However, it is just labeled on the agenda as budget discussion. And if you feel ready to jump.
No, I'm just asking, are you making a presentation on the budget process, or are we just going to bounce around questions? I'm not sure how this is designed to work.
Okay, so at some point, I'm going to need direction. The staff and I will need direction on preparing these types of scenarios that you want to review. And usually what happens is the reports are generated and then you discuss what is acceptable or want changed or have your complete dialogue and discussion. So at this point, you know, other people were involved in previous discussions. And so this is where they directed us before. And so this might be just a starting point for you, but ultimately we have a relatively tight time frame to make any adjustments or changes. And so the more direction that you're able to give me, the faster we'll be able to get to where we need to be for the publishing and all the other legal requirements.
So can you just review what these columns are? So you got E rate, is that estimated? Is that like a 1% or what is E rate? And then how did you distribute it? Are these just proportional all the way through so that the total adds up to the 1% or whatever the rate is?
Okay, sure. And I know Lindsay and Danelle presented it to the last board, so I may rely on them for a little so that we're consistent in what was presented before. E rate is federal funding. So federal funding. It is something that public libraries are able to receive. There is a lengthy application process, and it is essentially 3 years going on at the same time, where you have funds coming in from the previous year, you're in your current year, and then you're also projecting what you may receive in the next year. And so E-rate is funds. Again, it's a revenue line item. However, it is not guaranteed. This year's E-rate for this budget, maybe.
May I interrupt?
Sure.
The E-rate funding is not a revenue.
Oh.
It is a reimbursement that we would receive against our internet access and telecom expenses. But it is not calculated into this budget because we have not been approved yet.
I did
Yes.
note that when I did some homework on that E-rate. When do we find out when those federal funds are approved? Because will we know that before we want to go ahead and approve the budget?
There is no fast deadline when USAC sends out their letters saying we are funding you. Last year, we were approved in the first wave. We have been delayed in approval for, clear into February before.
So the only thing E-rate affects is the line items for internet access and what else?
Telecom.
And do you know how long that program has been going on? Is it new, or is it something that's been going on for the last 20 years? And have we ever been shot down when we were told, no, we're not getting any funds?
Our agency has not been turned down, but again, we have to pay the full bill for internet access and telecom until they authorize the funding. Prior to Post Falls consolidating with the district, there was a problem with USAC losing their application, and they said, "Oh, sorry, you're just not going to get it." So it is possible to not receive those funds.
So we are supposed to budget as if we're not getting the money?
I don't think that it is appropriate to budget without receiving authorization for funding.
All right, then I'll bring up the next popular conservative question. What strings come with the attached with the federal funds?
There are quite a few. The thing that comes to mind immediately is the Children's Internet Protection Act. And that is essentially what made libraries more conservative in terms of whether they budget or not. Yes, that is another reason why, depending what strings come attached. There's also things like we have to declare that we're not terrorists. There's a complete form and process that we go through. We do have a consultant that assists us.
Okay, and my last question then is, has that form or request been already submitted, or is that something that this current board or the new director, Alexa, will need to be sending out?
We have already submitted our request for reimbursement, and we are in the process of what they call PIA reviews. And it is to ensure that we are compliant with all of their rules and regulations.
So my question on it is, can I gather how much that funding is by kind of comparing on lines 33 and 34, 435, 11,000 versus 23?
The reimbursement that we would, that we have in for request for funding is 94,000 and change.
And it would get subtracted off those two items, the 34 and 35.
Correct.
94,001. Something.
Do we just hop around on the budget? That's all I have about that particular question.
Would you like to know what the scenarios are or
Sure.
what other information?
I'm looking for somebody to drive this, otherwise I'm just gonna keep shooting questions out.
That's kind of back what I was asking is, what are these columns? So we've got 0%, 1%, 2%.
Tax increases, I guess.
No, that would be the changes, but are the numbers, I don't know, the numbers in all the columns look like they're the same, even though is the only thing changing is the line item 1. Property
Yeah.
tax.
The revenue.
That's right.
I would welcome Lindsay for you to go ahead.
It has been a while since we created these scenarios, so I will do my best to remember what they are. Last year, the board commissioned the compensation study from McGrath and Associates, and we adopted the temporary minimum for staff salaries with the assumption that we would move forward to the full minimum this year. And so salaries, we originally created 3 scenarios, which is a low market salary, below market salary, and mid-level salary. And those were all too expensive for us to afford. So the board asked for different scenarios, and salary scenario A and B are both at the low end of the salary range for the current market based on the compensation study. And the columns, so like when you see 0% for fiscal year 24, that means there's no increase in what we're asking for tax. We're just taking the growth that's provided to us The 1% is asking for 1% increase, 2% and 3%. The maximum that you can ask for is 3%. And so that's where the last column is. And for salary scenario A, I'm trying to remember, I believe that is, let me just look at one thing. Salary scenario A provides a moving staff to the adopted minimum and then providing, I believe, a 3% increase for staff that are not affected by that. And then salary scenario B is those things as well, but also adjusting for compression, which is when you change people's rate of pay so that someone who just started doesn't make what someone who's been there for 5 years making. And so even with taking 3%, we are still short money. For salary scenario B, we're short $94,000. And for salary scenario A, we're short $42,000. This also includes cuts that we've already made to the overall budget, which are listed on the 3rd page of those scenarios, showing cuts for programming and collections and legal services and all of those different categories. So I don't know if this is too much information or if you have further questions.
All right, I have a question. So for us to look at this and say, well, it looks like we have more expenses than we have revenue, at least most of these scenarios. But when I look at this, and I went through some of these number by number, not the entire spreadsheet, but and I'll take an example. Let's just say utilities. Again, I'm just trying to understand how this is put together, how it is created.
Can you say the specific line item number?
Yes.
So we can all be.
I'd be happy to. Let's just say line items number 54 through 60 as an example. And I'm not picking on this particular thing other than just trying to understand the process. So utilities at Athol, based upon what was budgeted for last year, the current year, versus the next year, 2024, it's a 46% increase. So something must be known that's going on in Athol, I would expect. I don't know. I compared these numbers. And then I go to another one. Let's just say I go down to Harrison and they're expecting a 3% decrease in the utilities. Or I jump over to Post Falls. Again, I'm not looking for fault. I'm looking for understanding. Post Falls is expecting or needs a 19.5% increase for utilities. And I think they even changed I'm not sure if it was this current year, all the lighting went from, I think, to LEDs. I'm not sure when that was done. So I would expect that if anything, there will be a slight decrease. Now I know a rate increase is coming up. You'll have a newspaper article on that as well. But I don't understand the disparity between all the percentage changes, increase or decrease in utilities. Again, I'm using it as an example to understand and learn this thing. So can somebody explain where that comes from? I don't understand.
I look at past history for all of the utilities that come into each line and how we are progressing through the current year and what increases we're seeing. And if we have a change in a particular vendor for a certain utility and what their costs are. So I'm looking at trends to calculate those dollars.
So just mostly historical and current information you're getting in terms of billing?
Yes.
To come up with these projections?
As well as you stated, the newspaper articles that there are rate increases coming out.
Yeah.
And, you know, the aging of certain HVAC systems that use energy, that use more when they're not running efficiently.
Yeah. I'm just, again, I'll pick on just one. That's a pretty significant change, 46% increase in Athol. Again, it's a small facility. It's not big money. We're talking $6,000, I guess. This current year was budgeted and we're projecting $9,000. It's a big jump. And then Again, these are all different, significant. I mean, we look at the differences here, 46% for one place, the next one's 3% decrease, and 18% increase, 17, 19.5, 21. But if it's historical and based on what's currently going on and what's projected, that's fine. I'm just trying to make sure I understand where these numbers come from.
What I would ask Lindsay is maybe another column just to the left of between the approved budget and FY 24 columns showing that maybe the actuals to date or actuals to date extrapolated at the rate they are to 12 months. I know snow removal, I brought it up at the meeting before, it was like 47,000, it was over, but now we're doing 35,000 for next year. Looking at last year's budget to me is not giving me visibility to, and maybe I have to do it on my own, but I need visibility into what we're actually spending. And maybe that would show what Tom's bringing up on the utilities, but.
So last Thursday in your packet, you did get some information kind of where we're at, and you saw the overall percentage, and you'll see all those line items too. So I would maybe refer you back to kind of get an idea, since we're about halfway through the year, where we're at.
Okay, so are you looking for direction like on whether we prefer scenario A or prefer scenario B at this point? Or which column, 0, 1, 2, or 3%, or you're not looking at that yet?
We have a limited amount of time today, the amount that with the agenda change, it changed our amount of time that we had. I know that there is on the agenda additional meetings perhaps that we can discuss the budget. If you know and want to talk about it, I mean, that's, if you have a quick answer, this is great, or you want something different. If we can provide you with more information, we are looking for specific direction.
Sharon, if you don't mind. Also, I think it would be very important for Katie Blank to be here. She, love it or hate it, has been on this board for 30 years and has vast knowledge. She might, especially you, Tom, she might have something to say that you're like, oh, I didn't realize that. And that's what's so great about having 5 people on the board is with different experience and time being on the board is they can say something that you never even thought of, but it makes so much sense when they actually say it, and it'll change what you're thinking about a certain column or line item. So I would prefer if we waited, we don't have much time now, if we waited to discuss any actual movement until Katie's here.
Okay, good point.
I'm looking for understanding, and I guess what I'm looking for is how do I know what I'd be looking for is where can we cut something so that these balance out and we can do the salary. But I don't know why some of these are higher, and I don't know why, the numbers were picked. Other than just 6% increase this year or something. Is there something you can kind of tell me that because our budget is on track or slightly higher that you decided maybe everything should go up by 5%, or is there some guide of how these numbers were?
This is as an example, for one line, our software line. Everyone has told us to count on at least 5 for any software renewals. So, we are reaching out to our vendors to find out what is going to happen in, their crystal ball. And if you have a better crystal ball on snow removal, I'll gladly hear it.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, real quick. Yeah, and I always have a crystal ball. You guys know that. Lindsay, last month you gave out information that is exactly what Tim just asked for. I don't remember what meeting it was, but it had the different where money was taken from one line item or several line items to potentially give the employees the different ranges. So maybe they could get those, maybe the 2 guys could get those.
That's probably good. That's part of
Okay.
this, I think, was
Is it in there?
in the back of that.
Okay.
Okay, so, yeah, and so we'll get more information on the budget at our
Yeah.
next meeting. Right now, we need to move on.
Can I do a real fast question though? I mean,
Well, that was
it's not,
also.
well, it's not so much a question, it's just real fast. It looks like no matter which scenario we use, which pay scenario, and given the expenses and the revenue, every scenario here shows we don't have enough money. I mean, they're all negative balances at the bottom there, meaning that the revenues minus their expenditures. So if we can't raise revenues, meaning by not raising taxes, if we don't do that, I don't know if there's any other way to raise or increase our revenue, is one of our jobs we can do at home, meaning privately, are we gonna simply stare at the expenses and see where we think we want to cut expenses? I mean, I don't want to just sit here and do all the work at the meeting. I mean, I can sit home and stare at this, go, okay, I want to cut office supplies. But I'd like to know what is expected of myself in terms of looking for us to get a good bottom line. I mean, we can't sign off on a budget that says we're gonna spend $100,000 more than we're bringing in.
No, we'll have plenty.
Okay,
Sorry.
And if that is the direction I can, and for everybody is 0%, then I can spend a lot more time putting together that information with what we would recommend for areas of opportunity.
Okay, yeah, 0% would be mine. So, yeah, we need to get to the setting, special and regular meeting dates.
But before, I would just add, what I would look for is some kind of footnote or something on each of the, or
details.
why the numbers change, like you mentioned, software. If I knew, I mean, I won't spend time looking at it if we know it's 5%.
Okay, so special meeting dates, do you want to handle that?
I did a little bit of polling for trustee availability, and you have some notes in front of you. There were 2 dates that all trustees confirmed they were available. That was July 6th and July 25th. The Post Falls meeting space is also available. I was going to bring to the board's attention that the next regular board meeting has been scheduled for July 20th from 9 a.m. to 12 at the Harrison Library. The Harrison Library's capacity is 25. At our last meeting, we had in excess of 25. And so for your consideration, there is more time available anywhere between 9 and 4 p.m. here at the Post Falls Library, if you choose to change the time or the location or both. And I have not heard back from 2 trustees about availability for some other dates that were proposed.
Can you specify which ones? Because I know I did answer one of these, but if you sent out another one, maybe I did.
So for you, July 7th, 17th, and 18th, if you're available.
Okay, yes, 17th not.
Okay. And then there's just one trustee that I've not heard from, but it looks like maybe the 7th and the 8th, July 7th and July 18th may be available.
Okay, so we are confirmed for July 6th then?
You would need to make a motion to have a special meeting, I think. And the purpose of the meeting for noticing, I was initially last Thursday talking about budget discussion as being the primary subject.
Okay,
And we definitely know next week is off the table for any meetings.
You'll need to extend the meeting because
Yeah,
it's till
I was-
4 o'clock, so.
okay, have it.
I move that we extend the meeting for 7 minutes.
That's very specific. Okay, it has been moved that we extend the meeting for 7 minutes. All those in favor?
All right.
Okay, the ayes have it. The motion is carried. We are extending the meeting for 7 minutes. Okay, and so then,
Next week,
I think we exhausted that week.
did we? Or was it just one day that was?
No,
proposed?
I believe that whole week, somebody had an issue on each day. Do you remember, Rochelle? That when we looked at the
yeah,
26th to 29th, everybody, it didn't work.
I thought there was only 29th and you couldn't make it. That was all that was proposed.
well, yeah, I think that's when we came up with the 20th and 22nd. So,
I mean, in my memory, that's how it happened, but
I think you're right. Okay, so then should we do, July 6th and July 25th? Does anyone want to make a motion on that?
For special meetings.
for special meetings. Yes. Thank you.
July 6th and which?
July 6th and July 25th, the 2 dates up at the top of the
Okay.
page.
Make a motion that we have a special meeting on July 6th and 25th, 2 to 4 p.m. each day,
For special budget meetings.
or
This is budget.
budget discussions, yeah, special meeting.
Okay, it has been moved, that we have special meeting, or July 6th and July 25th for, special meetings for budget discussions.
Sorry.
All those in favor?
Hi.
All right.
Okay, it has been approved.
And then maybe consideration for the July 20th meeting. If you would like to have that in Harrison, like I said, there will be public comment, and last time there was at capacity in Spirit Lake. So that is a regular board meeting. We could keep the same time, or we can modify it or make it longer, but I would maybe have the board entertain changing location on that due to capacity.
Okay, so were you suggesting that we have a marathon from,
So
Oh,
I'm just
from
saying
9
that the meeting room is available at Post Falls from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. There's an obligation after that. So you can have a meeting and post the notice of it any time within that. You could have a long meeting and have a budget discussion at that as well. We will be bringing probably the roof bid for approval at that meeting as well. So there is some items maybe with discussion.
I moved that we change the regular meeting on July 20th to Post Falls from Harrison. And if we really are obligated to go to Harrison, we go with a special meeting. I don't know where I'm going. Move to Post Falls, as always.
okay, so could you repeat the words of the motion
I
again?
move that we move our regular July 20th meeting from Harrison to Post Falls and keep the same time, 9 to 12.
Let me know when I can try to amend that. You know what it is. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Could we amend that to 2 to 4? Or 1 to 4, whatever it needs to be, as long as it's not 9.
For the public meeting?
Hmm?
For the regular schedule meeting,
For the one we're moving to
Okay.
Post Falls, yeah, the regular.
so not in the morning, afternoon.
2 to 5 is the regular 3-hour time.
Okay, so it has been moved to
We have
amend.
to be out of the room by 4.
Oh, okay.
Has been moved to amend the time from 1 to 4. All those in favor of moving the time from to 1 to 4?
And location,
Aye.
Right.
Okay,
Voting on the amendment.
all right, so that's the amendment, and now the full motion is to move the regular July 20th meeting from Harrison to Post Falls from 1 to 4. All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Right.
Okay, the ayes have it, and we've now moved the regular July 20th meeting from Harrison to Post Falls, 1 to 4.
And I would like to say, is it Abby? Who's the,
Ani,
Ani? I would like to say, we apologize, Ani, and we will come there at some point.
Okay, so we got about 2 minutes, so then we should discuss the next section of dates, which is July 7th, July 17th, and July 18th. Now, so you said you're not available on the 17th?
Right.
Okay, so July 7th and July 18th were okay for everyone else who responded?
For everybody that I have had a response from, Katie is the only person that I don't.
Okay. All right, I would entertain a motion for July 7th and July 18th? Or should we wait, you think, for Katie?
We are going to have a meeting on July 6th, and I
So
don't
that would
know,
be
that
too
may be
short.
too late for the July 7th meeting. that you could add the 18th meeting and maybe the July 6th. As I was directed at the last meeting, I will have this line item to set special and regular for all meetings on
Okay.
your agenda.
Yeah.
So at the 6th, you could determine again, maybe if we're adding the 18th. It would probably be too late to add the 7th.
Okay, so we should,
Can we cancel the, we have the
You can-
six on the six, can we cancel, or do we
You
have to
could
do
do that
28?
as well. That as well.
I'd like to have both.
all right, I would entertain a motion that we have a meeting, a special meeting on July 7th, from 2 to 4 at Post Falls.
I move we, on July 7th, have a special meeting from 2 to 4 at Post Falls.
Okay, it has been moved. We have, on July 7th, we have a special meeting from 2 to 4 at Post Falls. All those in favor?
Right.
Okay, any opposed? All right, the motion is carried. We, will have a meeting on July 7th from 2 to 4 PM at Post Falls. Well then, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, it has been moved that we adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. The motion is carried and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.